Hi everybody! Today is my 50th birthday, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to start this series of videos where I tell stories about my life. I'm recording these largely for my daughter Coral, but also I figured I'd share them with you too, because I think some of them are good stories and kind of interesting. And I call this one The Mystic and the Gambler. This is the story about my birth. So the first thing to know is that my grandparents were spiritualists, which means that they belonged to a religion where they believed they could communicate through mediums with different spirits and particularly their dead ancestors. And if you'd met them, you would have thought this was very out of character. They were, in most ways, very normal Midwestern Methodists. My grandfather was a pharmacist, my grandmother was a nurse, and they didn't seem at first glance to have anything weird and mystical going on, but the truth is my grandfather was something of a faith healer, and that's a whole story for another time. But when my mom was in her 30s, this would have been early 1970s, and she already had 3 kids from a previous marriage, she went to a psychic with her parents at Cassadaga. Now, Cassadaga is a town in Florida that is known for having a very large spiritualist community, and they would go there pretty often and visit different psychics and get readings. Well, my mom met a psychic who gave her a reading and told her that she was going to have a son, and described me to a T, that I would have blonde hair, curly hair, blue eyes, and described my father as well. And my mom at the time was dating a man who looked sort of similar to her description of my father, and said, "Oh, it's this guy that I'm seeing." And the psychic said, "No, actually, you haven't met him yet." And so she kind of laid this groundwork, and a few years later, when my mom was working for my dad, she ended up having a conversation with him late at night, and he told her that his one biggest regret in life was that he never had a son. He had a daughter, my sister, who's 9 years older than me. And somehow, I don't know if it's because she was still thinking about this prediction, but my mom's first response was, "I could give you a son." My dad said, "Well, we can't date. You work for me." So the next morning, my mom quit her job and started dating my dad, and they eventually got married and tried for a couple years to have a baby. And when she was in her 40s, she actually got pregnant with me. She was 44 when I was born. My dad was 47. And so it's interesting to think about whether this psychic lady's prediction really led to me being here. But the second half of the story, The Gambler, is about the night I was born. And so this is the story as I've heard it relayed by my dad. Now, as I mentioned, he really wanted a son. That was the whole reason that he married my mom. And he was very anxious, waiting to find out. Of course, this is 1975, and I honestly don't know if they had the technology or not to determine birth of a child, or the sex of a child, but they didn't know, and so he was waiting to find out, and it took a long time. He was in the waiting room, and while he was there was another guy who I refer to as the Gambler, who apparently had some kind of system that he had devised for being able to be able to predict the sex of a baby. And now my dad, to be clear, didn't believe in anything like that. He was not a spiritual person. He was not a mystical person in any way. But he did take an interest when this guy told him that he could predict the gender of the baby. And of course he was hoping it would be a boy, but this guy brings out this little notebook and starts asking him questions, and it was just question after question. What was his mother's name? What was his father's name? Where did they come from? What was his birthday? What was his family's birthday? All these kind of questions, and it seemed to involve some degree of like numerology and other systems. And the kind of thing that superstitious gamblers would use to pick horses and that kind of thing. And goes on for a long time. And after an hour or so of him doing all this, the man sits there and he quietly tabulates it. And my dad's getting more and more nervous. And he says, "Okay, I've done the calculations, and you are going to have a girl." And my dad just snaps. He was a very volatile Italian kind of guy, and he starts to he's about to kick this guy's ass. He gets up in his face and he's like, starts yelling at him. And at that exact moment, the doctors came in and or the nurse came in and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Gennaro, you have a son." So that's sort of that's a little backstory about my birth. It's fun to think that I don't know, maybe I was supposed to be a girl, and my dad, by sheer force of will, compelled the universe to change its mind. But or maybe the guy system just wasn't too good. I think that's probably the truth. Anyway, I'm gonna record more of these and share some more stories, but since it's my birthday, I thought I'd tell you that one, and look forward to sharing more with you.